I was standing in my parents' dining room in Miami, holding a crystal flute of champagne that I had bought when my father lifted his glass higher than everyone else's. The room went quiet, in that way that always made my stomach clench. A mix of Spanish and English floated in the air, the scent of roast pork and garlic and lime wrapping around us like a second skin. Family. That was what they always called it. Family. My mother stood beside him in her best red dress, the one she wore for Christmas Eve Mass. She was smiling that polished smile she kept for company. Around the table, aunts, uncles, cousins, church friends, neighbors who had become almost relatives over the decades, all turned their eyes toward the head of the table. My younger sister Sophia sat right next to my father. She looked perfect as always. Dark hair in soft waves, gold earrings catching the light, a white dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She rested her manicured hand on the arm of her fiancé Lucas, the up-and-coming lawyer. Everybody adored. I stood closer to the kitchen doorway, half in and half out. A convenient place for someone who had spent most of her life invisible. My father cleared his throat the same way he did when he was about to make a speech at church or at some family dinner. I felt the familiar dread rise in my chest. To family, he said, his accent thickening with emotion. To the children who make you proud and to the ones who, well. He chuckled, pausing for effect. Who take up space until God sends you a real blessing. The room erupted in laughter. Every head turned toward me. Some people laughed awkwardly, some openly. My mother covered her mouth, pretending to hide a smile. Sophia looked down at her plate with a tiny, satisfied smirk that she did not bother to hide from me. Heat crawled up my neck. My fingers tightened around the glass. For a second, I thought it might slip right out of my hand. I did what I always did. I smiled. A small, tight smile. I lifted my glass the way a good daughter should. To blessings, my father finished turning and kissing Sophia on the top of her head, as if to make sure no one misunderstood who he meant. To the daughter who has taken care of us all these years. Our angel. More applause, more clinking glasses. Someone called out a toast to the generous one, the successful one, the one who gives back. They meant my sister. I took a sip of champagne I could not taste and swallowed hard against the burn in my throat. I felt 12 years old again, 15, 19. Every age at once standing in some doorway, while the adults praised Sophia's beauty, her charm, her future, and forgot that I existed. Except this time I knew something they did not. They were all wrong. It was not Sophia who had been taking care of my parents. It was me. I held the glass a little tighter, grounding myself in the cool feel of the crystal. The overhead fan hummed the salsa music from the living room, spilled softly into the dining area, and I realized with a clarity that felt like glass in my chest that this might be the last Morales family dinner I ever attended. Of course, the story did not start that night, not really. It started years earlier, long before Lucas and his perfect white smile, long before my parents discovered social media and started showing off their successful daughter, long before I had spreadsheets and interest rates and a savings account that never seemed to grow. It started the year I turned 26 and took on a second job to keep my parents from losing the little yellow house they were so proud of. But as I stood there, in that hot, crowded dining room, watching my father raise his glass to the wrong daughter, I knew one thing with absolute certainty: I was done being invisible. Somewhere deep inside me, something sharp and bright began to take shape. It was not rage exactly. I had spent too many years swimming in rage. It was something colder, clearer. It was the beginning of revenge. 5 years earlier, I was 26 and thought exhaustion was just a part of being a good daughter. By day, I worked in billing at a large hospital in Miami, buried in codes and claim numbers and endless phone calls with insurance companies. It was not glamorous, but I was good at it. I understood the language of deductibles and co-pays and denials. Numbers at least were honest. By night, I freelanced as a website designer, building clean, simple sites for small businesses that could not afford fancy agencies. Cuban bakeries, barber shops, a tiny law office that mostly handled divorces and wills. I sat at my little kitchen table in my small apartment laptop, open, cheap coffee beside me, fingers stiff from typing until well past midnight. Sleep came in short, choppy pieces squeezed between deadlines and the morning alarm. Sophia, 3 years younger than me, had just become a content creator. Our parents said it with pride as if she had invented the internet. She posted photos of herself at rooftop bars on South Beach in borrowed bikinis in front of cars that did not belong to her. She talked about brand deals and collabs and something called engagement. I still remember the night my mother called me, voice shaking just after dinner. Mi vida. I do not know what to do, she said. The bank. They sent another letter. Your father, he is so stressed. We are 3 months behind on the mortgage. They say they will start foreclosure. I sat down slowly at my kitchen table. My hands had started to shake before I had even opened my laptop. How much, I asked. She hesitated. I could hear the television in the background. My father yelling at some baseball game like nothing was wrong. 4,800, she whispered. They say if we can pay that, we can catch up. That was more than I had ever had in my account at one time, but I knew I would do it. Of course I would do it. That is what you do in a family, right? That is what good daughters do, especially in our Cuban community, where everyone talks about sacrifice and loyalty and how parents are everything. I will figure something out, I said. And I did. I took out a personal loan with a terrifying interest rate. I cut every expense I could think of. I stopped buying fresh coffee and switched to the cheapest instant. I lived on rice and beans and eggs for weeks, pretending I was just embracing our culture, when the truth was I could not afford anything else. I sent the money to the bank, watched my account drop to almost nothing, and went back to work. My parents thanked me over the phone once, for about 30 seconds. Then my mother asked if I could come over on Sunday to help cook for Sophia's brand launch party. She was starting a lifestyle channel, and they were throwing her a party in the backyard to celebrate. It will mean so much to her if you are there, my mother said. So I went. I stood behind the grill flipping pork, while my father told everyone about how brave Sophia was, taking risks, putting herself out there. My mother handed out pastelitos and said how proud she was that her youngest was already helping them out when times were hard. She promised she will always make sure we are okay. My mother said, tears in her eyes. My Aunt Rosa squeezed my shoulder, a quick, sympathetic gesture that told me she saw more than she was saying. I turned away before anyone could see the way my face crumpled. Over the next 5 years, the pattern repeated so often it became a kind of sick rhythm. The restaurant where my father worked part-time closed without warning. I helped cover their utilities for almost a year. My mother needed dental work she had put off for too long. I put it on my credit card. A hurricane came close enough to tear shingles off the roof and knock out their power for days. I paid for emergency repairs. The hotel. They stayed in, the groceries they threw out after the fridge had been off too long. Every time there was a crisis, my phone rang. My parents cried, begged, promised they would pay me back as soon as they could. My father talked about selling his beloved classic car, but somehow that never happened. I kept detailed spreadsheets because numbers calmed me. Mortgage payments, utility bills, medical expenses, interest piling up like snow on a rooftop we did not have. I told myself it was temporary, that once they got back on their feet, once Sophia's influencer career took off, once Lucas made partner at his firm, things would change. The truth was, things were changing, just not in the way I expected. Every Sunday dinner, every Christmas, every Thanksgiving dinner, every birthday. I watched my parents brag about how generous Sophia was, how she was the one making sure they were okay, how she had such a good heart, giving them money whenever they needed it. They told stories about the time she covered the mortgage or paid for the roof repair. Sophia smiled and let them talk. I sat at the end of the table in thrift store dresses chewing meat I had paid for, listening to people gossip about how smart she was to build a brand. How lucky our parents were to have such a giving daughter. And I said nothing, because if I spoke up, I would be the bitter one, the jealous one, the difficult one. Instead, I became the quiet one, the reliable one, the invisible one, until the night my father raised his glass and called me a placeholder instead of a blessing in front of everyone we knew. That was the night everything snapped. After the toast, the evening blurred into a haze of noise and forced smiles. I stayed long enough to avoid a scene. I helped my mother clear plates. I watched Sophia pose for photos in front of the little Christmas tree, her white dress glowing against the lights, Lucas's arm around her waist. My father clapped Lucas on the back and called him son. I felt like a ghost drifting through my own life, By the time I slipped out the front door, the Miami night was thick and warm. I walked down the cracked driveway to my car, heels clicking, and sat behind the wheel with my hands shaking so hard I had to grip the steering wheel just to feel like I would not fly apart. My phone buzzed before I could put the key in the ignition. It was a text from my Aunt Rosa. "Mi niña, you deserve better than that," the message read. "You should know something. Your parents have been telling everyone it is Sophia who pays for everything. They say she is the one who keeps them afloat." I stared at the words until they blurred. There it was. Confirmation of the thing I had suspected, but tried not to believe. It was one thing to feel overlooked. It was another to know that your own parents had rewritten history and handed your sacrifices to someone else wrapped in a shiny bow. My heart hammered in my chest. I tried to breathe past the tightness in my throat. How long I texted back. A moment later, my phone rang. I answered with a whisper. "Rosa." Her voice was low and furious. "Years, mi amor. At church, at family barbecues, at every baby shower and wedding. They talk about how Sophia sends money, how she covers their bills. When someone asks how they manage with the restaurant closed and your mother not working as much, they say, 'We have a generous daughter. She takes care of us.' They never say your name." I closed my eyes. The car felt small, airless. Maybe they are just confused. I managed. Maybe they... "No," she cut in. "They know exactly what they are doing. I have seen your mother show people screenshots of transfers with your name cropped out. I thought I was imagining it at first. Tonight, when your father made that toast, I realized I cannot keep quiet anymore." There was a roaring in my ears. For a moment, I thought I might pass out. "Gracias," I whispered. I needed to hear that. After we hung up, I did not start the car. I sat there in the dark driveway with the engine off, phone still in my hand, and felt something inside me shift. The hurt was sharp and familiar, but beneath it there was something harder. I went home and did not sleep. At 3 in the morning, I turned on the kitchen light, made myself strong coffee, and pulled out the box where I kept old bank statements and receipts. My laptop hummed to life. The blue light glowed against my tired skin. I started with the mortgage. I logged into my account, pulled 5 years of records, and listed every payment that had gone from my bank to theirs. 17 mortgage payments amounts, changing with interest rates and late fees. I added them together carefully. $28,000. Then the property tax payments. Another $5,000. Roof repair $6,000. Utility bills $3,400. Dental work $4,200. Prescription medication, when my mother's insurance accidentally lapsed, $1,600. Emergency hotel after the storm, $1,000. Late fees. Penalties, interest on the loan I had taken to cover that first crisis. By the time the sun pushed pale light through my kitchen blinds, I had a list of every major payment I had made for them over the last 5 years, written neatly in a spiral notebook with the total at the bottom. $52,300 and something dollars. I sat back and stared at the number converted to words in my head. It sounded even more unreal. $52,000. Money I could have used for a down payment on my own home, for graduate school, for travel, for a better car, for therapy, for health, for anything that would have moved my life forward. Instead, it had vanished into the black hole of my parents' financial chaos and my sister's reputation. I thought of all the small sacrifices, the ones that did not appear on paper. The cheap meals, the second-hand clothes, the nights I had skipped my own prescriptions because the CO pay was too high after a big payment to them. The dates I had canceled because I had been too tired from working 16 hours in one day. I thought of every Sunday dinner where my parents had praised Sophia for sending them a check for some imaginary emergency while I sat at the table biting my tongue so hard it hurt. I felt sick. Then, because I have always believed in evidence, I opened my email. I searched my inbox for messages from my parents over the last 5 years. Anything with words like help or money or thank you. There they were. Please, written in hurried Spanglish. Promises to pay me back. Thank you notes that read like afterthoughts. I clicked on a few of the messages and something strange caught my eye. Several of the payment confirmations I had forwarded to my mother had been forwarded again. Not to my father. To Sophia. My stomach dropped. I opened one of the threads and scrolled. There it was. An email from my mother to my sister right after one of the larger mortgage payments. "Mija, look. It is done," my mother had written. We will tell everyone you helped us again. It is better for your image. Elena does not care about that stuff. Sophia's reply was short. Perfect. I need them to see me as the good daughter. Elena likes to stay in the background anyway. I sat there at my kitchen table, the laptop glowing, my coffee cold and forgotten. I read the exchange 3 times. This was not an accident. This was not a misunderstanding. This was a deliberate choice. I closed the laptop slowly. My hands were no longer shaking. If anything, they felt steadier than they had in years. The hurt was still there, but something else had settled over it. Something like ice. I was done giving them the benefit of the doubt. I was done buying the story that I was and always would be the disappointment. If they wanted a story, I would give them one. I tried to go to work like nothing had happened. On Monday morning, I put on my usual navy slacks and pale blouse. I tied my hair back, grabbed my hospital badge, and drove to the billing office. The halls smelled like antiseptic and coffee. Phones rang. Printers hummed. Everything looked exactly the same. Nothing felt the same. I sat at my desk and stared at a claim for a patient who had stayed in the intensive care unit for 6 days. Codes and numbers swam in front of my eyes. Somewhere down the hall, someone laughed loudly. A janitor pushed a cart past my cubicle, humming under his breath. My phone buzzed on the desk. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something in me said answer. Elena. A familiar male voice, hesitant. It is Lucas. I blinked. Lucas. Yeah, I am sorry to bother you at work. He sounded nervous, which was unusual. He was usually smooth, practiced. Do you have a minute to talk? I think we need to. My pulse kicked up. About what? He took a breath. About Sophia, and your parents and money. I looked around the office. Everyone was busy. Nobody was paying attention to me. There is a coffee place across from the hospital, I said. Can you meet me there in 20 minutes? He was already there when I walked in, sitting at a small table near the back, phone on the table, hands wrapped around a paper cup he had not touched. He looked different. The usually perfect hair was slightly mussed, and there were dark circles under his eyes. Thank you for coming, he said as I sat down. I did not bother with small talk. What is going on, Lucas? He looked me straight in the eye. For once, the courtroom polish was gone. He just looked tired. First, I need to apologize. He said I should have talked to you a long time ago. I should have asked questions. I did not. That is on me. About what? He exhaled. About the story your parents have been telling, about who has been supporting them. I stayed very still. You know that Sophia lost her job at the marketing agency about 10 months ago, right? He asked. I shook my head slowly. No. They told everyone she left to focus on her own brand. He gave a humorless laugh. Of course they did. She was fired, Elena. She had stopped showing up on time. She spent her days filming and editing content instead of doing actual work. They let her go. He took a sip of his coffee, grimaced, and set it down. She has been pretending to go to work since then. She leaves the house at 8 in the morning, comes back at 6 in the evening. Half the time, she is at the mall or sitting in her car watching videos. We have been living off my salary and credit cards. My stomach tightened. I thought about the expensive outfits, the dinners, out the constant stream of photos. We are drowning, he said quietly. I checked our accounts last week because something felt off. There is nearly $12,000 in credit card debt. I found a personal loan she took out in my name without telling me. $5,000 gone. He looked up, eyes suddenly bright with anger and shame. And then last night, after that disaster of a toast, she admitted something else. She told me your parents have been telling everyone she is the one keeping them afloat, that it helps her image in the family and with some of my relatives. She said, it is not like Elena cares about that stuff. She never speaks up. I felt my jaw clench. Do you know how much money you have given them? He asked. Yes, I said. As of this morning, I do. I told him the total. Saying it out loud made it sound even more absurd. His face went pale. Jesus. That is... Elena. That is a small inheritance. That is a down payment on a house. That is... I know, I said. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of conversation from the rest of the cafe wrapped around us. I thought the money came from her, he admitted. From her job, from her little brand deals. When your parents would talk about how generous she was at Sunday dinners, I did not question it. When she talked about sending them money, I believed her. I never saw anything from our accounts going out, so I assumed it was hers. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I should have noticed. I am a lawyer, for God's sake. I am supposed to see the details. This is not about your skills as a lawyer, I said quietly. This is about a family drama that everyone has been pretending is something else. He nodded slowly. There is more, he said. I went through Sophia's phone after we left your parents' house. I know I should not have, but I was desperate. I saw the emails from your mother, the ones where she sent Sophia your payment receipts, the ones where they agreed to use your money and call it hers. He pulled his phone from his pocket, thumbed through, and turned the screen toward me. There it was. The same exchange I had seen at 3 in the morning, only now it sat in his hand. Undeniable. My mother thanking Sophia for letting them use my payments as her cover. Sophia joking about being seen as the good daughter, my father chiming in with some line about how image mattered in our community, that Sophia needed to look generous for Lucas's family, that I would not miss the recognition. They have been manipulating all of us, he said. Not just you, me too, my parents, their church friends, everyone. A shadow fell across the table. We both looked up. Sophia stood there, eyes wide, lips pressed together so tightly they had gone white. She wore leggings and a sweatshirt, and for once, she looked less like an influencer and more like the kid sister who used to follow me around the house. What are you doing? She hissed at Lucas. Why are you talking to her? What lies is she feeding you? Lucas stood slowly. She is not the one who has been lying. People nearby had started to glance over. I did not stand. I just looked at my sister. Really looked at her for the first time in a long time. Her mascara was smudged. Her hair looked like she had pulled it into a ponytail with shaking hands. She looked young, fragile, terrified. Is it true? I asked quietly. Did you know the money was mine? Did you know they were taking what I did and giving you the credit? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You do not need the attention, she finally snapped. You never cared about what people think I do. I have to look successful. It helps the family. It helps all of us. Something cold settled in my chest. It helped your image, I said. It cost me 5 years of my life. Her eyes flashed. Oh, please, you love playing the martyr. You like being the strong one, the independent one. That is your thing. You do not want to be the golden child. You want to be the one who rises from the ashes. So congratulations, you got your story. She turned to Lucas. We are leaving now. No, he said. One word firm. She froze. I am filing for separation, he said quietly. I cannot do this anymore. The lies, the manipulation, the entitlement. I should have stopped it sooner, that is on me, but I am done. Her face crumpled. For a moment I saw a flash of the little girl who had cried when she fell off her bike and scraped her knees. This is her fault, she whispered, pointing at me. She has always been jealous. She has always wanted to ruin things for me. I stood then. My legs felt steady. I have been paying for your image for 5 years, I said. Your shoes, your parties, your story. I am done. The cafe had gone very quiet. People were definitely watching now. I did not care. I picked up my bag and walked past my sister, past the man who had once almost been my brother-in-law, out into the bright Miami sun. I did not look back. They came to my apartment that night. I had just changed into an old t-shirt and shorts, ready to eat leftover Chinese food straight from the carton, when someone knocked on the door. Not a polite knock, a relentless pounding. I checked the peephole. My parents stood in the hallway. My father with his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitch. My mother wringing her hands, eyes already wet. For a moment I considered not opening the door. I could pretend I was not home. I could let them stand there until they got tired and went back to their house, back to their story. But there was a part of me that wanted the confrontation. Needed it. The same part that had stayed up all night with bank statements and that had walked out of the cafe without looking back. I opened the door and stepped aside without a word. They walked in like they owned the place. My father's eyes swept the living room, taking in my secondhand furniture, the small TV, the tiny dining table pushed against the wall. My mother perched on the edge of the sofa like she was afraid to relax, as if she might catch something from my life. My father did not sit. What nonsense are you spreading? He demanded. What lies are you telling people about us, about Sophia? Your aunt calls, your cousins call. They say you are telling stories. I leaned against the arm of the chair and crossed my arms. I have not told any lies, I said calmly. I have told the truth. There is a difference. My mother sniffled Mija. Please, we are family. We do not air dirty laundry in public. You did not mind airing your opinion of me in public last night, I said. You did not mind calling me a placeholder in front of everyone. My father flushed. It was a joke. No, I said. It was the story you have been telling for years. I am the disappointment. She is the blessing. That is the script. My mother dabbed at her eyes. You are twisting things. We love you both. You are being dramatic. I walked to the dining table and picked up the folder I had placed there before they arrived. I had known somehow that this conversation was coming. I set the folder on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were neatly printed bank statements highlighted in yellow spreadsheets, a handwritten summary page with the total at the bottom. Look, I said, start wherever you want. My father hesitated, then sat down heavily. He picked up the first statement, eyes scanning the lines of text. My mother leaned over his shoulder, frowning. Mortgage payments from my account to theirs. Rent for their small storefront when my father had briefly tried to open a sandwich shop. Tax payments, medical bills, utility bills. Page after page. What is all this? My father asked, though his voice had lost some of its bluster. It is the last 5 years of my life, I said. $52,000. My mother gasped. That cannot be right. It is conservative, I said. I did not include groceries or gas or little things like cash. I handed you after church because you said you needed it. These are just the big things. The things that kept the bank from taking your house. The things that kept the lights on. The things that kept you insured. My father swallowed. For the first time in a long time, he looked unsure. We were going to pay you back, he said, with what I asked. You are already behind on the mortgage again. You are behind on the property taxes again. I checked the public records this morning. You are in trouble. Again. My mother started to cry in earnest. We did the best we could, she said. Life is hard. We never had the chances you had. You are so strong, Mija. You could handle it. Sophia, she is different. She is fragile. She needed our support. She needed the credit. I looked at her for a long moment. You mean she needed my credit? I said. My money, my sacrifices, my invisibility. My father slammed this folder shut as if he could make the numbers disappear. You are ungrateful, he said. We gave you everything. Food, a roof, school. You think you did not owe us anything in return. That is not how family works. In our culture, children take care of their parents. That is justice. That is respect. I felt something in me crack. You gave me the bare minimum the law requires, I said quietly. You fed me, clothed me, sent me to school, and then you spent my entire life treating me like I was less than my sister. Less pretty, less interesting, less worthy of your attention. My voice rose despite my efforts to stay calm. You never came to my band concerts because you were too busy with her cheer competitions. You paid for her college and left me to take out loans. You bragged about her job, her looks, her fiancé. You called me when you needed money and called her when you wanted to show off. My mother shook her head. That is not true. It is, I said. You may not remember every slight I do. There was a moment of silence in the room, heavy and thick. Then my mother spoke, her voice small. We refinanced the house last year, she whispered. We took out some equity. We thought it would help us get ahead. I narrowed my eyes. How much? She glanced at my father. He glared at her, but she kept going. 8,000 in cash, she said. We gave Sophia 60,000. She said it was an opportunity, una inversión, that it would make us all rich. She said she wanted to open a boutique, maybe an online company. She said it would impress Lucas's family, that they would see. She came from a family with resources. The room tilted slightly. You gave her $60,000, I said slowly. In 1 year, after I had given you over 50,000 in 5 years, and you stood in that dining room last night and called me a burden. My father stared at the carpet. The money is gone, he said. Her store failed. The lease, the inventory, the marketing. It all fell apart. She did not know what she was doing. You thought she would be your golden ticket, I finished. You thought she would be your inheritance, your retirement plan, your way out. And when reality did not cooperate, you looked for someone else to drain. My mother sobbed into her hands. We made mistakes, she whispered. We were trying to help her. We did not realize. You did not care. I corrected softly. You did not care about what it cost me. As long as you had a story to tell, as long as you could brag about your generous daughter, your influencer, your future lawyer's wife, as long as you had something to say at church and poker night and every family wedding. My father looked up, eyes suddenly hard again. So what now? He demanded. You cut us off. You leave us to lose the house. You let your parents end up on the street. That is your revenge. That is your justice. I held his gaze. You are not my responsibility, I said. Not anymore. I will not watch you burn my life down to keep your illusions warm. I walked to the door and opened it. You need to leave, I said. I am done being your emergency fund. I am done being your invisible daughter. I am done letting you hand my life to Sophia like a gift. My mother stood slowly, eyes red. We are your parents, she whispered as she walked past me. You owe us. I shook my head. No, I said, not anymore. My father paused in the doorway, looking like he wanted to say something else. In the end, he just walked out. I closed the door gently behind them. For the first time in years, I did not feel guilty. I felt freedom. It turned out was quiet. In the weeks that followed, my phone did not ring at all. No frantic calls about shut-off notices, no emergencies, no guilt-soaked pleas. Sunday dinners continued at my parents' house without me. My mother posted photos on social media of Sophia at the table holding a wine glass, laughing with cousins. If anyone noticed my absence, they did not ask me about it directly. They asked Aunt Rosa. The truth spread the way truth often does in families like ours. Not in one dramatic explosion, but in a series of small, steady leaks. Rosa told her husband, who told his brother, who told his wife, who whispered it to her sister after church. A cousin called me late one night, voice raw with anger and shame, saying he had never questioned the story because it had fit so easily into the way my parents talked about us. I just assumed he said, "You know how it is. Sophia always in the spotlight, you always in the background." I should have asked questions. I am sorry. My grandmother called from Hialeah, her voice shaky but sharp. Your mother did the same thing with me, mi reina, she said. She was always favoring your father and his brother, giving them more, praising them, more using my small pension to fund their foolishness. I stayed quiet. I thought that is what mothers do. Now I see the pattern. I am sorry. I did not protect you. Some relatives scolded me, told me I was being cruel, that family was everything, that a good daughter does not turn her back on her parents. I listened politely and hung up. Their opinions no longer had the same weight. Others reached out with their own stories of being the unseen child, the responsible one, the quiet one who held everything together while someone else got the applause. It was like joining a secret club I had never known existed. The biggest shift did not come from the phone calls, though. It came from the silence. Without constant crises to manage, my evenings opened up. I still worked hard, but the pressure had changed. The money I earned could sit in my account for more than a week. My spreadsheet started to show savings that did not evaporate overnight. Some nights, I just sat in my small living room, listening to the hum of the air conditioner and the distant sound of traffic, and let myself breathe. One Tuesday afternoon, my manager called me into her office. She was being promoted to a higher role in the hospital system. She wanted to recommend me for her position. You are sharp, Elena, she said. You understand the system. You are calm under pressure. You care about fairness for the patients and the hospital. This is more responsibility, but I think you are ready. The raise was significant. For the first time in my life, the idea of financial security felt less like a fantasy and more like something I could reach. The same week, I got an email from one of the law offices I had done freelance work for. The senior partner wanted to meet with me about a consulting project to help them streamline their billing. I stared at the screen, realizing that all that time I had spent quietly showing up, being reliable, learning the ins and outs of a complicated system, had been building something under the surface. Not an image, a foundation. One Saturday morning, I drove to a lake outside the city, somewhere I had not been since high school. The air felt different there, cooler somehow, the light softer. I sat on a bench and watched older couples walk their dogs. Kids ride bikes along the path, distant boats gliding across the water. My phone buzzed. It was my father. For a moment I considered ignoring it. Then I answered. His voice was quieter than I remembered, stripped of the usual bluster. I found your birth certificate, he said. Without preamble, I had to get it for some paperwork at the bank. I waited. "You were born 6 weeks early," he said. "Your mother was so sick. The doctor said you might have problems. Developmental delays, physical issues. They warned us. They put the fear into us." He took a shaky breath. "For a year, we watched you like a hawk, waiting for something to be wrong, waiting for you to need us in some dramatic way. Then you started reading at 3, math in your head at 5. You were so capable. It scared us." He laughed bitterly. "Isn't that ridiculous? We were scared because you were healthy, because you were strong, Sophia. She needed us. She stumbled, she cried, she made mistakes, and we swooped in. She made us feel important. Useful, you did not." The admission landed somewhere deep inside me. "We told ourselves you did not need attention, that you did not care about praise," he said. "We convinced ourselves that by focusing on her, we were doing what was best for the whole family. It was easier than facing the truth." "What truth?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. "That we were afraid of you," he said simply. "Afraid of your independence, your intelligence, your ability to survive without us. It made us feel small. So we made you small in our story. We let Sophia take the light because we thought you could live without it." He cleared his throat. "I am not asking for forgiveness," he added. "I do not deserve it. I wanted you to know it was never about you not being enough. You were always more than enough. You scared us because you showed us how much we had failed." We sat in silence, miles of highway and years of hurt between us. "I got a promotion," I said finally, "at the hospital, and there is a consulting firm that might want to hire me full-time in another city. I am thinking about leaving Miami." There was a pause. "You should go," he said. "You should take every good thing that comes your way and run with it. Do not stay for us. We do not deserve that." The honesty startled me more than any apology could have. After we hung up, I sat on that bench by the lake and let myself cry. Not the choking, desperate sobs I used to spill into my pillow after long days. These were quieter tears, tears for the girl. I had been always trying to earn something she would never get. Tears for the parents who had been too afraid of their own failures to see what they had created. When the tears stopped, I felt lighter. A breeze moved across the water, cool against my skin. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a life where my parents' opinions were not the center of my universe, where my worth was not measured in how much I could sacrifice. A life where I could choose myself. The consulting job offer came 2 weeks later. The firm was based in Atlanta, a healthcare consulting company that helped hospitals untangle their billing systems and negotiate better contracts. The recruiter had found me through a combination of professional networking sites and word of mouth. Apparently, my name had been mentioned in more than one meeting. The position came with a salary that made my head spin, full benefits, and the possibility of partnership down the line. It would mean relocating, leaving Miami, leaving the entire web of expectations and gossip that had held me in place for so long. "You would be perfect for this," said the woman on the other end of the Zoom call. Her name was Patricia, sharp and warm at the same time. "You understand the technical side and the human side. That is rare. Think about it. You do not have to decide today, but we would love to have you." I thought about it for exactly 3 days. Then I said yes. Telling my manager at the hospital was easier than I expected. She was disappointed but supportive. Telling my few close friends was bittersweet, but they were excited for me. Telling my parents was something else. I drove to their house on a humid Sunday afternoon. The little yellow house looked smaller than I remembered, the paint peeling in spots, the lawn overgrown. The front porch where my mother had once hung strings of lights for every holiday was bare. Sophia's car was in the driveway. Of course it was. She answered the door, hair pulled into a messy bun. No makeup. She looked tired. Older. "Elena," she said, as if she could not quite believe I was standing there. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to all of you," I said. "Together." She hesitated, then stepped aside. My parents were sitting in the living room. The TV was off, an unusual sight. My father looked smaller somehow, his shoulders less broad. My mother's hair had more gray in it than I remembered. I sat on the chair opposite them and took a deep breath. "I took a job in Atlanta. I said I am moving in 6 weeks." My mother's hand flew to her chest. "Atlanta, so far, why?" "Because it is a good job," I said. because it is a chance to build something, because I want a life that is not defined by what you lack. My father flinched. I am not here to ask for your blessing, I added. I am here because there are things I need to say before I go. I stood and pulled an envelope from my bag, placing it on the coffee table. My father stared at it like it might explode. There is a cashier's check inside, I said. $15,000. It is enough to catch up on your mortgage and give you a few months of breathing room. After that, you are on your own. I will not send another dollar. My mother's eyes filled with tears. Why, she whispered. After everything, why help us at all if you are just going to leave? Because this has nothing to do with you, I said. This is about me choosing who I want to be. I do not want to spend the rest of my life resenting the money I gave you. I want to give you this last bit and know that I did what I could. Then I want to walk away with a clean conscience. I turned to Sophia. She stood near the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. You and I are done, I said. We are not sisters anymore. We are strangers who share DNA. I do not forgive you. I do not wish you harm. I hope you figure out who you are without their expectations crushing you. But I will not be part of your drama again. She swallowed hard. For once she did not shoot back a sarcastic remark. She just nodded, tears spilling silently down her cheeks. My father picked up the envelope with trembling hands. You are really going, he said. Yes, I said, I am building a life where I am not the villain in your story, or the invisible one propping up your image. You do not get to narrate this chapter. My mother reached out, but I stepped back. I spent 3 decades trying to earn your love, I said. I nearly broke myself, trying to become someone you would be proud of. I am done. I am proud of me. That is enough. I walked to the door. Elena, my mother called, wait. I paused, hand on the knob. You will always be our daughter, she said. You cannot change that. I thought of my grandmother's words, of the quiet evenings in my apartment, of the job offer, waiting in my inbox, of the girl I had been who thought that love was something you purchased with sacrifice. Maybe I said, but family is about more than blood. It is about who shows up, who sees you, who celebrates you. I am going to build that kind of family for myself. Then I walked out of the little yellow house for the last time. I did not look back. Moving to Atlanta felt like stepping onto a different planet. The city was bigger, the air a little cooler, the accents different. I rented a small townhouse near a park with tall trees and joggers and older couples walking hand in hand in the evenings. My new office was on the 12th floor of a glass building overlooking a busy stretch of highway and a skyline that glittered at night. Patricia met me in the lobby on my first day all business in a navy suit, but with eyes that crinkled when she smiled. I am glad you are here, she said. We have a lot of work to do. These hospitals are a mess. I threw myself into the work. We spent long days meeting with executives, poring over contracts, mapping out billing systems that had grown like wild vines over the years. I traveled to small towns and big cities, standing in boardrooms, explaining how changes in their processes could save millions and make patients' lives easier. I was good at it, better than I had been at anything in my life. For the first time, my voice had weight. People took notes when I spoke. They asked for my opinion. They paid for my expertise. I hired a small team of analysts and trained them. I made a point to notice their work, to say out loud when they had done something well, to make sure they knew their value. One of them, a young woman named Grace, told me one afternoon that no one had ever made her feel so capable. You are building something here. Patricia told me after a particularly successful presentation, you are not just fixing systems, you are building a reputation. I knew she meant more than the company's reputation. I was building my own. Outside of work, my life slowly filled in. I found a therapist, a woman named Dr. Harris, who helped me untangle decades of guilt and resentment. We talked about boundaries, about emotional manipulation, about how easy it was for children of immigrant families to confuse obligation with love. You do not have to pay for their choices, she said one afternoon. You are allowed to choose yourself. That is not betrayal. That is survival. I started attending a yoga class at a studio near my townhouse. I made friends with a neighbor, a retired schoolteacher who baked too much and brought me cookies. She claimed she should not eat. I went on a few dates. Most were forgettable. One was not. His name was Aaron. He was an architect who specialized in sustainable buildings, more comfortable talking about materials and light than feelings. But he listened, really listened. We met at a coffee shop when we both reached for the last blueberry muffin and decided to split it instead of arguing. It felt like the beginning of a rom-com cliché, but the reality was slower, quieter. He did not know my history. To him, I was just Elena, a consultant who liked strong coffee and old movies and long walks in the park. It was disorienting at first to be seen without all the baggage of my family story. It was also liberating. Months passed. Seasons changed. The work grew. Patricia offered me a partnership track. My savings account slowly became something substantial, something that looked suspiciously like a future. I kept my distance from my family. Aunt Rosa called occasionally, her voice full of updates I had not asked for. My parents were in therapy, she said. Sophia had taken a job at a coffee shop and was working her way up to assistant manager. The house was still theirs for now. The church had learned the truth, and the judgment had been swift. Some people had cut my parents off. Others had embraced them, insisting that grace meant more than gossip. They are trying, Rosa said, for whatever that is worth. I did not know what it was worth. I did not know if it was my business anymore. Then one afternoon in late spring, a package arrived at my office. There was no return address. Inside was a thick envelope in a small box. The envelope contained a letter written in my mother's looping script. The letter was 9 pages long. I read the first sentence 3 times before my brain accepted the words. I'm sorry. Not the cheap defensive. I'm sorry if you were hurt that people throw around when they want to shut down a conversation. This was different. She listed specific moments, times she had chosen. Sophia over me. Times she had laughed at my expense. Times she had asked me for money on my birthday, on holidays and hospital beds. She did not make excuses. She did not blame poverty or culture or stress. She admitted in black ink that she had enjoyed the way people looked at her when she bragged about her generous daughter. She admitted that she had loved the attention of being the mother of the golden child. She admitted that it had been easier to ignore my quiet competence than to face her own feelings of inadequacy. You were always the strong one, she wrote. I made the mistake of thinking that meant you did not need love. I see now that I was wrong. So wrong. The letter ended with the sentence that made my chest ache. You deserve to be celebrated, not used. The small box contained a gold bracelet, thin and simple with a tiny engraved plate. It was the bracelet my grandmother had given my mother when she left Cuba. The one my mother had always said she would give to the daughter who made her proud. I sat at my desk with the bracelet in my hand and the letter on my lap, and let myself feel the complicated rush of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger, gratitude, grief for the relationship we had never had. I did not run to the phone. I did not book a flight to Miami. I did not send an angry reply or a tearful one. I folded the letter carefully, placed it back in the envelope, and put both into the bottom drawer of my desk along with the bracelet. Maybe one day I would decide what to do with them. For now, it was enough to know that the truth had been spoken out loud. On a warm June Sunday, I sat in the park near my townhouse with Aaron beside me, watching ducks paddle lazily across the pond. Children shrieked in the distance. Someone played soft jazz from a speaker under a tree. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Grace, my analyst. Just signed my first client on my own. She wrote, "Could not have done it without you. Thank you for believing in me." I smiled and texted back my congratulations, feeling a quiet swell of pride. Aaron watched my face. "Good news?" he asked. "One of my team members landed her first solo client," I said. "She worked hard. She earned it." "You light up when you talk about your people," he said. "You know that." I shrugged, a little embarrassed. "I like seeing people get the recognition they deserve." He nudged my shoulder gently. "I wonder why." I laughed softly. He had heard pieces of my story over the months. Not every detail, not the entire messy saga, but enough for him to understand why phrases like family drama and betrayal and injustice made my jaw clench. "Do you miss them?" he asked now, not unkindly. "Your parents, your sister." I watched a duck dip its head beneath the surface and re-emerge, water droplets glinting in the sun. "I miss the family I wanted," I said. "I miss the fantasy of parents who saw me, of a sister who was my friend of holidays that felt warm instead of tense. I miss the idea of those people. But the reality, the way things really were, no, I do not miss that." He nodded, thoughtful. "Do you regret leaving?" he asked. "Only one thing," I said. After a moment, I regret not choosing myself sooner. I wish I had walked away. The first time they made it clear I would never be enough. But I also know I could not have. I had to live through it to learn. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. You know what I like about you, he said eventually. Hopefully more than one thing, I replied. He smiled. You know how to set boundaries without turning into stone. You did not let their toxicity turn you bitter. You still care about people. You just do not let them use you. That is rare. I thought about the Sunday dinners, the mortgage payments, the humiliation of that final toast, the quiet nights alone with my spreadsheets and my doubts. I thought about the choice I had made to walk away, about the last check I had given them, about the letter in my drawer. I had to learn that caring and being a doormat are not the same thing, I said. That generosity without respect is exploitation. That forgiveness and reconciliation are not the same. I can forgive someone and still keep my distance. Do you forgive them? He asked. I thought about it. I forgive the parts of them that were scared. I said I do not forgive the choices they made because they were scared. I accept that they are who they are. I release myself from trying to fix them. If that counts as forgiveness, then yes. A breeze moved through the leaves overhead. I leaned back against the bench and closed my eyes for a moment, feeling the sun on my face. For the first time in my life, my sense of self did not feel like something fragile that could be shattered by a careless comment at a family dinner. It felt solid. Mine. The first Christmas I spent in Atlanta, I did not go home. My parents invited me in a roundabout way, through a group text that included cousins, aunts, uncles. There would be a big Noche Buena dinner, they said. Roast pork, rice, and beans, music. Maybe even a small reading of the Christmas story in Spanish and English. I read the message and felt a familiar pang in my chest. Then I closed my phone and made other plans. On Christmas Eve, I hosted a small dinner at my townhouse. Aaron came bringing a bottle of wine and a homemade sweet potato dish his grandmother had taught him. Grace arrived with her girlfriend and a plate of cookies. My neighbor from down the hall brought a flan that tasted almost like the one my grandmother used to make. We ate and laughed and told stories about work and life and the small absurdities that make up most days. When someone asked about holiday traditions, I shared the pieces of my childhood that still felt warm. Midnight mass, singing carols in Spanish, the way my grandmother used to insist on kissing everyone on both cheeks before they could leave. I did not talk about the year my father made a toast that broke something in me. Late that night, after everyone had gone home and the dishwasher hummed in the kitchen, I sat alone by the small tree in my living room. The only lights were the ones on the tree and a candle flickering on the coffee table. My phone buzzed. A video came through from Aunt Rosa. She must have recorded it in secret. My parents' dining room looked different. Smaller, somehow. Fewer people. The table was still covered in food, but there were empty chairs. My father stood at the head of the table, glass in hand. My mother beside him, eyes wet. Sophia sat near the middle, hair pulled back, wearing a simple dress and no visible designer logos. My father cleared his throat. To family, he began. His voice wavered. I almost turned it off. And to the ones we failed, he added. To the daughter we did not see when she was right in front of us. To the one who carried us when we should have carried her. My breath caught. We have been learning, he said, slowly, painfully. We have been learning that justice is not favoritism, that love does not mean using someone until they break. We have been learning about boundaries, about respect, about karma and payback, and how sometimes the tables turn without anyone planning it. He lifted his glass a little higher. To Elena, he said, wherever she is, may she be happy, may she be free, may she know that we are finally proud of her, even if she never wants to hear it from us. My mother wiped her eyes. Sophia looked down at her plate. They drank. I sat on my couch watching the shaky video on my phone and felt something loosen in my chest. This, I realized, was my revenge. Not their suffering, though. There had been plenty of that in the months after I left. Not the judgment from the church or the neighbors. Not the whispered gossip at weddings and funerals about the daughter who had walked away. My revenge was this: I had forced them by absence and boundary, an unwavering refusal to play the old game, to see themselves, to see the truth. To see me? I did not send a reply to the video, I did not call, I did not book a last-minute flight. I turned off my phone, pulled a blanket around my shoulders, and watched the tree lights blur as tears filled my eyes. Injustice had not been erased. Old wounds did not disappear because of one halting toast, but the story had changed, and I had been the one to change it. It was around that time that I started telling my story publicly, not with names or locations or details that would make my parents the villains on some revenge forum. I did not want that kind of payback. I had seen how quickly online mobs could turn people into caricatures. That was not what I wanted for anyone, not even for the ones who had hurt me. Instead, I started a podcast. It began as a side project, something small. I recorded episodes late at night in my home office, talking into a decent microphone I had bought online, sharing stories about family drama, about betrayal, about emotional manipulation, and the quiet revenge of choosing yourself. I talked about toxic loyalty, about the pressure in immigrant families to sacrifice everything for parents who had sacrificed for you, about the way inheritance can be more than money, how it can be patterns of favoritism, silence, and guilt. I told anonymized versions of my own experiences, weaving them together with stories listeners sent in tales of wills that had cut someone out without explanation, of siblings chosen, and others discarded, of parents who used religion to control grown children, of offices where promotions were stolen by louder voices. I did not offer neat resolutions, I offered questions. What does justice look like when someone you love has hurt you? What does revenge mean when you believe in karma more than punishment? How do you reclaim your story when someone else has been narrating it for you? Women started writing to me, especially older women, some in their 60s, some in their 70s, many of them from communities like mine where family was supposed to be everything, and questioning that was considered betrayal. They told me about Thanksgiving dinners that turned into trials, about Christmas mornings where one child got everything and another got socks, about inheritances that had gone to the child who had shown up at the last minute to pretend to care, while the one who had been there for decades was written out. They thanked me for saying out loud what they had been afraid to say, even in therapy. The podcast grew slowly, then faster. People shared episodes with friends, with sisters, with their own daughters. It was not a viral explosion, but a steady climb. I mentioned words like revenge and justice and family drama in the episode titles, partly for search optimization, partly because they were honest. I talked about court cases where judges had to untangle decades of resentment written into wills. I interviewed lawyers who specialized in inheritance disputes, therapists who helped clients set boundaries with toxic family members, grandmothers who had cut ties with children who refused to stop abusing others. Sometimes late at night, I would sit in my office with my headphones on, listening back to an episode before posting it, and marvel at the fact that the girl who had once been too afraid to speak up at her own Christmas dinner was now telling her story to strangers around the world. My parents found the podcast eventually. They did not confront me about it. Rosa told me that my mother had listened to one episode where I talked about a daughter who was expected to pay with her life for her parents' choices. She had cried so hard she had to pull the car over on the side of the road. I did not stop making the episodes. I was not doing this to hurt them. I was doing it to heal myself and to reach others who were still trapped in stories that were killing them slowly. If some of that healing came in the form of a public rebalancing of narratives, a quiet turning of tables, then that was its own kind of revenge. Not cruel, not petty, just accurate. One year after I moved to Atlanta, I stood in front of a small audience at a community center, microphone in hand, heart pounding just enough to remind me I was alive. The podcast had been invited to do a live event. The room was filled mostly with women, many of them older, hair silver or white, eyes sharp. A few younger faces, too, daughters and granddaughters who had come along. We had spent the evening sharing stories, some funny, some heartbreaking. We had talked about wills, about inheritances, about family businesses that had become battlegrounds, about the way betrayal can hide behind smiles at weddings and baby showers. At the end there was a Q&A. A woman in the front row stood up. Her hair was cut short, her face lined, her posture straight. "How did you find the courage to leave?" she asked. "To walk away from your parents, from your sister, from everything you had known. I am in my 60s, my mother is in her 80s. I know she uses me. I know she will never see me. I cannot imagine cutting her off. How did you do it?" The room went very still. I thought of my parents' dining room, of my father's cruel toast, of the drive home in tears. I thought of Aunt Rosa's late-night call, the spreadsheets. the email threads that had revealed the conspiracy of image and gratitude. I thought of the confrontation in my apartment, the envelope on the coffee table, the door closing behind them. I got tired of dying. Slowly, I said, finally. Every time I paid one of their bills and listened to them, praise my sister. A little part of me dimmed. Every time I let them rewrite the story, I erased myself a little more. One day I realized that if I did not leave, there would be nothing left of me. I set the microphone down for a second and pressed a hand to my chest. I did not wake up brave, I said. I woke up exhausted. I woke up angry. I woke up with evidence. I woke up with the knowledge that justice is not about making them suffer. It is about refusing to suffer for them. I picked up the microphone again. Leaving was not one dramatic moment, I said. It was a series of choices: to hang up the phone, to say no to one more check, to move to a city where their opinions could not reach me, to build a life where my worth was not measured in sacrifice. The woman nodded slowly, tears in her eyes. It still hurts, I added. There are days I see families in the park and feel a sharp ache. There are holidays when I wonder what might have been if things had been different. But when I compare that ache to the constant slow bleed of staying, I choose the ache every time. After the event, people lined up to talk to me, to hug me, to whisper their own secrets, to say that hearing my story had given them a new way to think about their own. Later that night, back in my townhouse, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and my laptop open to the podcast dashboard. The numbers ticked slowly upward. Listeners, downloads, comments. One comment caught my eye. It was anonymous, but the writing style was familiar. The English tinged with Spanish, the phrasing echoing the way my mother spoke when she was trying very hard to be precise. I am the mother in some of your stories, the comment read. The one who favored one child who used another, who believed my fear and my pride more than I believed the truth. I hurt my daughter deeply. She walked away. I do not know if she will ever come back. But I am learning. Your words are knives that cut me and balm that soothes me. Thank you for telling the story from her side. I needed to hear it. To hear. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. Maybe it was her. Maybe it was someone else. In the end, it did not matter. The point was the same. My story had become a mirror, not just for daughters, but for parents, for sisters, for anyone who had played a role in a family drama they no longer wanted to be part of. I closed the laptop and walked to the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered. Somewhere in Miami, my parents were probably getting ready for bed. Maybe they had argued that day. Maybe they had sat quietly. Maybe they had gone to therapy and talked about favoritism and manipulation and confrontation and the way injustice can hollow out a child until she decides to leave. Maybe they would change, maybe they would not. That was not my responsibility anymore. My responsibility was to myself, to the life I was building, to the people I loved who loved me back without keeping score. To the women listening to my voice in their cars, in their kitchens, on their walks, wondering if they too were allowed to choose themselves. I thought of the girl I had been standing in that hot dining room with a glass of champagne in her hand, listening to her father call her a placeholder. I wished I could reach back through time, take the glass from her fingers and whisper in her ear, "You are not a placeholder. You are the main story. You are allowed to walk off their stage and build your own theater. You are allowed to demand justice, to let karma do its slow, patient work, to choose a revenge that looks like a peaceful life." I turned off the kitchen light and headed to bed. Before I fell asleep, I whispered a small prayer, not to any particular saint or deity, but to the universe itself. May the invisible daughters find their voices. May the family dramas lose their hold. May the ones who were excluded from the will inherit peace instead. And may those who betrayed finally see what they have done, not so they can be punished, but so that perhaps in some quiet corner of their hearts they can change. If you have ever been that invisible one, the one who sacrificed while someone else took the credit, I hope you hear this and know you are not alone. I hope you find the courage to choose yourself, to set the boundary, to walk away if you have to. If my story resonated with you, share yours. Say it out loud, even if it is just in a comment or a message. Stories are how we turn pain into power. And if you want to hear more stories like this about revenge that looks like reclaiming your life, about justice that looks like self-respect, stay with me. There are many more chapters to tell. Like, comment, subscribe. Those are just words the platforms use. What they really mean is this: stay, listen, be part of a different kind of family, one where your worth is not measured by what you endure, but by who you become.